Hello, all you wonderful denizens of the internet. Ryan here, another Uncomplication. I'm excited about today. I'm going to share with you a true love of mine, and I hope that this is useful for you if you are a creative person or you have passions or ideas that you want to bring to the world. I have for a long time been a creative uh, designer, a designer of life. I have only really ever had one real job where I was like an employee of someplace, and the rest of the time I have started companies, I have consulted, freelanced, and have just always found ways to put my creativity at the forefront because if I do anything other than that, I'd feel trapped and stymied. And so I want to share with you some ideas that I have about what it takes to make your ideas reality. And this is also coming from not just as a person who has a lot of skills with the actual methods and tools of the creative process itself, but also in my last enterprise for 10 years, running a crowdfunding platform or network of platforms. I got to consult with, work with, and learn from hundreds or thousands of different crowdfunding campaigns. The campaigns themselves are like little mini businesses. It's like a crash course in the basics of business. Because to do a crowdfunding campaign, you need to have a lot of the same elements. You need to have your ideas fleshed out. You need to communicate and market them. You need to understand who your audience is. You need to deliver on your objectives. And so the projects themselves became these little enterprises. A lot of them also turned into real functioning companies, brick and mortar companies, online companies, uh, everything that you can imagine. I could tell story after story about all of the cool things that started up under my kind of watchful observation. And so I'm going to bring a lot of these things together, and this is just going to be my off the top of my head thoughts about getting shit done, about doing what you want to do, doing it effectively, and yeah. So let's dig in. I'm going to say up front that part of this is a sales pitch. I've been doing a ton of consulting professionally here, and I just opened up the opportunity for random people who watch my YouTube videos to set time with me and to dig into their problems and to talk about their ideas, their businesses, whatever it is that they're working on. I think that there's a methodology to taking things from these big nebulous ideas with all the moving parts and complexity and really boiling it down to those next logical steps that you can do and do successfully. So if you're interested in that, check out the link in the description of this video. You can go find that Gumroad page I set up and you can book me for a session. I have it at $200, but you can name any price. So I hope to see more of you. I did one yesterday and it was awesome. It was so filling and exciting, and I think we got to a lot of good progress. So, okay, what are we talking about here? This is my practical guide to getting shit done, taking big ideas and turning them into reality. So the first thing that is always the case I found is that when you talk to someone who has a vision or you sit with your big ideas, you'll find that there might be this nugget of an idea that gets you really excited, and then that will branch out and touch another aspect that is related, and there might be something else that's related, and then there might be all of these other things that before you know it, the simple idea has become a constellation of all of these different ideas. And even in talking about it, one gets really kind of scatterbrained. So, oh, what is the business idea that you're trying to start? Oh, well, it involves this thing, but then, oh, we're going to also branch into this. It wouldn't it be cool if that, and then this relates to this. And, oh, I didn't mention that we're also thinking about this, and then, have you seen that? And so you get this kind of muddled clarity where there is a nugget, a nucleus of a really powerful idea, But those things are often not allowed to flourish because what we tend to do is we whiteboard, we bullet list, we plan, and we end up with these huge, what I call glass castles, because they're all in our brains, and they're these big complex machines that all interrelate, and there's all of these moving parts, and it's all in this ideal place in our brains where you can't really uh, question it or get it out, or no one can really poke holes in this part because, oh, you don't really understand this part over here and how that supports this. And so it just becomes this thought construct. And what I'm going to talk about is my experience of actually turning these things into reality. And so I like process. I like creative process, and I like the idea of artistic limitations, because we all have the ability to do anything, and it's really appealing to look at the world as this giant blank canvas and see all of the different opportunities and areas that we could focus. And what a lot of us do is we start stacking a brick over here and then a brick over here and a brick over here, and we're always busy. We're always, working and doing these things. But at the end of months and months of labor of this kind, there's no structure, there's no shelter, and you've covered a lot of ground, but you haven't actually built anything. So what I'm always encouraging people to do when they bring me these big ideas and present this amazing vision is, okay, two things. First of all, is find a way that you can articulate the kernel of that vision, without all the complexity surrounding it. What is the real why behind the thing that you're thinking about doing? And find a way to just get really focused on that, because that's like a seed that you can plant, and a lot of the things that will grow can come from that intention, but they're not things that you're going to even know about at this early stage if you're just building these glass palaces in your head, these glass castles. So the first part is really just being able to summarize that vision, and sometimes it can even be in the form of a problem statement. And there's a saying that a well-stated problem is half solved. And in a way, when we're able to clearly articulate the challenges that we're facing, these could be big vision things or even the thing that you got to get done today. If you can capture that as a problem statement, you can start a process. You can start designing. You can start working with this. Because one of the things that I found is that in all of the enterprises I've ever been involved in, which is many at this point, we never had the whole thing figured out. We found places where we could create and test small experiments that solved a particular problem or challenge. And this might be kind of idealized, because sometimes, yeah, we would overbuild something, or we would be, planning and imagining and building this big thing. But the goal, I think, is to get to a minimal viable product, an MVP, that can solve the problem that you're putting forward in a way that is testable. So especially with talking to people that have more than one thing going. I've got my day job going. I've got this project I'm starting on the side. I've got this idea to reposition my company or whatever it might be. I really like the concept of a test or a pilot. The cool thing about doing a pilot and thinking about it in that way, a prototype or a pilot, is that one of the biggest advantages you can give yourself when you're building something, whether it's whether it's just a creative endeavor like a piece of art, or it's a business model, or whatever it is to find the people that you are solving a problem for. Don't just imagine that they're out there. Don't just imagine that, oh, this product, this service is for everyone. Really challenge yourself to figure out who you think is going to use this, and then talk with them directly and engage them in that pilot, in that build out, because the experience and the feedback and the uncovering of challenges that you don't even know are there happens so readily once you start putting mice in your maze, that to just build the maze without the mice is to miss this critical step. And the great thing about a pilot is you can position it as this is small, it's not perfect, it's really flexible, we really value your feedback. We're coming to you as an expert audience member or potential client. We're trying to build something for you, so tell us how we're doing. Does this solve your problem? What could be better? What did you like? What did you not like? And the goal is not to have someone who's just telling you all of this stuff that you want to add. The goal is, can you, in a small, testable prototype, create an end-to-end value chain where you are solving that problem, and do it in the simplest way possible while testing the most pieces of your hypothesis as you can. And from that, you can get to what I really think of as like the first block of scalability. So a lot of people I've talked to lately are looking for scale. You know, that's the big thing. If you're in a business, you want it to be scalable. You want it to be sustainable and scalable. But I find that there's a lot of early stage thinkers that haven't even got to that first success yet. They haven't delivered on that value. They don't have that MVP or that testable piece of the value chain that can then be scaled. So that's what the pilot is. That's what the prototype is getting to that first unit block that can then be scaled. And that might take longer than people want in some cases. It's a process of iterative design. And one of the things that I have over here is from some of the other consulting that I've been doing, where again I've been talking about process. The ability to take big ideas and then work through a set of steps that actually helps us learn, and then have an idea and then learn about it, have an idea and then learn about it. It's like a short circuit. If you can see this this diagram in the middle, a lot of people, what do? They have an idea, they build the whole thing, they launch it, and then they see what happens. And there's huge work and expense that goes into building and launching something. And the great idea, or the great part about a prototype or a pilot, is that you can test these ideas in a lightweight way that don't cost a lot of money, that cost a lot less time, and you can be learning and ideating and learning and ideating, so that by the time you get to that core unit of value, that thing that you can do and do repeatedly and do well, is well enough defined, well enough thought out, and in itself sustainable, so that then you can market it. You can get more customers. You can look at ways to scale it. But that core essence of what you're doing, that is the first challenge. And it requires, going back to this diagram, it requires guardrails. It requires focus. There's no feasible way that we can build out everything from our concepts the first time perfectly and launch it and not learn things that are going to make us wish we had done something different. So that is where this focus, what's the problem statement? There might be an entire constellation of things that you eventually want to address, but right now, what is the problem statement? A lot of times it's just, we need to get to our first customer. We need to have our first successful win with this idea or concept, and then everything can be designed around that goal, and that removes all of this other complexity, at least up front. Complexity can't be, you can't add simplicity, you can only remove complexity. So that, I think, is the big challenge for a lot of creative people that have all of these ideas, is really just to focus on that one, to test it, test those hypotheses, make it something viable, and then scale that. So that in a nutshell is is just some of the things that I've been talking a lot about lately, and I've seen this reflected in case after case. I'll leave you with one more story that kind of illustrates this for me, and it is the following. Again, this big challenge of there's so much complexity, there's so much opportunity. Where do you start? I see a lot of people that have these ideas of a grand empire that they want to build, and it's got all these moving parts. There's employees to hire, there's marketing, and it's just this huge enterprise. And that's what a lot of people, sell the vision on. This is what we sell to investors. This is, the big aha that's just going to make all kinds of money. And the story that I want to share comes from a book. I think it's The Pillars of the Earth. I'm not sure. Ken Follett, something like that. I might be wildly wrong there. But the thing that I like about it is there's a sequence in the book where there's this rich princess who gets run out into the woods with her brother and the clothes on her back. And she literally has nothing. And so I think she's got, ideas. She's got drive and motivation to get back to being, an elevated person, but she has no means to get there. So she could either sit there and just like feel bad for herself and think about all these things she had and lost and could have, but just be frustrated by it. But instead, what she does is she goes out and she starts gathering acorns, because they're all over the ground. They're free. Nobody really cares about them. So she just goes out, and her and her brother gather acorns. And then she takes those acorns to the market, and she trades enough acorns until she can buy a basket. And now with a basket, she can collect a lot more acorns. And so now she's coming in and she's trading even more acorns each time. And she gets enough to buy, a wagon. And then with the wagon, she can now collect, additional things. She's getting lumber, and she's getting, other resources. And she continues to do that until she has enough to buy a damn horse. And then with the horse, she can do the next step. And so I'm always asking people, and I guess like the long story short is she gets to like, her own stall in the market, and then her own, fleet of people that are collecting stuff and selling it. And she eventually gets to this empire. She builds up this trading empire, but it started with acorns. And so with a lot of the people that I talk to who have this grand vision, and they're beautiful visions, my question comes back to, what is your acorn? What is the thing that you can do right now that is in the direction of your big vision, but is small enough that you can actually accomplish it, you can sell it, you have a unit of value that you can now scale? I mean, that's exactly what this is. One acorn, that's that little building block. That's something that she could go and do repeatedly, and then once she figures that out, then these other steps are just scale. Bigger basket, more acorns. Cart, more acorns. It's taking that same thing that was proven. Do people want acorns? Yes. Can I get them? Yes. Is there competition in the market? Maybe, but maybe I'm positioning that these are better acorns. They come from higher up on the hill. Solving all of those problems once up front then gives you that scalable block that can be turned into something much larger. And I can tell you from going in front of VCs selling a vision that people like feel good visions. It's not a detriment, but what investors want to see, and I'm not encouraging you to take investment, but what the business world values is, how does this scale? Show me your unit cost of goods. Show me how, dumping marketing dollars into this is going to drive that curve up. And if you can't prove and show that basic unit of value is there, you've got paying customers, you've got, something people want, it's ready to go. That's what VCs want. They want to dump money into scaling something that is already figured out. They are never or rarely going to just give money to good ideas in the hopes that you figure out that unit of value in enough time, or with enough time to actually take off on the runway. Friends and family might, There's other places, but again, if you skip that step, you're actually doing yourself a huge disservice, because you can end up with an empire that has no foundation under it, and it's all just fluff and marketing and big visions with no meat on the bones. There's one more little thought that I wanted to say. I'm trying to remember what it was. It was about yeah, I forget what it was, but I think that kind of covers a lot of this. And so what do I do? What do I do when I talk to people? What I love doing is I love tell me the whole thing. Tell me the story. Where's the complexity? What's the big idea? What's the vision? What's the why? And just get it all out. Like, that's why I love these mind nodes. I'm sure you've seen me do a ton of. And I'll stay zoomed out from who I talked to the other day, just to maintain their privacy. Whoop. But it's just a matter of getting all these ideas out, getting them all diagrammed, getting them all kind of figured out at a high level, and then honing in on what are the moving parts. What are the big pieces of this? How do they relate to each other? And where can the most impact be made in the direction of that big vision, towards your whatever that big vision eventually is? What is the next thing that you can really focus on and actually make progress and build out, and just say no to all of those other things for the time being? That to me is this process of defining the scope, defining that problem statement, and then getting to a point where you can actually dig to the root causes of the challenge that you're trying to solve, gather data and insights, really understand the complexity of what you're trying to solve, listening more than talking. That's one of the things that drives me crazy, and I'm probably a huge offender as well, is that when people are excited about an idea, they just gush. They just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and they're never listening for healthy debate or challenging it, or hey, have you considered this? Or hey, there's a competitor doing that. You really have to stop, look, listen, and understand the reality of the situation. That's where ideas come from. And those ideas ideally are things that can be small enough that you can prototype them, build a small working example, get that in front of the audience, validate that it's a good idea, and then you can get into some more of the actual active doing. I think the wrong way to approach it is to just jump in, start doing all kinds of things as if it was all connected, and you've got all of these like kind of half-thought pieces that don't link together. They don't solve the complexity, and when you put the mouse in the maze, it either like takes one look at the maze and says, I'm not going in there, or they get lost in it, or they, there's all kinds of things that can happen when you try and design this perfect construction from the beginning versus, let's just make sure that we can hold a mouse in a maze and that it wants the bait that we're putting in front of it. And once we've got that, here's the cheese, here's the mouse. Once we've got that little testable thing accomplished, we can put our first corner in, and we can start leading this mouse in more interesting places. Anyway, I'll stop talking there. And if you're interested in an Uncomplication session, you can check out the link in the description. But I just really love this stuff. I love talking with people. I love the creative process. I love asking questions, and ultimately empowering you to go out in the world and do the things that you're passionate about in a way that you are likely to accomplish that. So that's all for today. I hope this was useful, and until next time, cheers.